been together for the last 5 hours. I am Ms. Wooten, and I serve as Vice President of the Board, and I represent District 1, which is West Selma, which we toured today, and that is Wards 1 and Wards 2.
Good evening, I'm Brenda O'Quanu, and like you said, people call me Miss O, and I represent District 2, which includes Ward 4 and Ward 5. Selma High is one of the schools in my district. So, thank you for coming and welcome to Selma.
And we did meet briefly earlier. I'm Phyllis Hauser. I represent District 3.
I'm Dr. Tanya Miles, and I represent District 4. It's Wards 6, 7, and a street in Ward 8. Those are my areas in R.B. Hudson when we had Knox and Kingston on our schools.
Dr. Howard. Dr. Howard, again, thank you for considering us, and congratulations on being one of our 5 finalists. We appreciate you coming down to interview with us tonight and spend a little time getting to know the board, our city, and our students, faculty, and staff. Of course, we're going to ask you a series of questions. Don't be long, we'll be taking notes, and afterwards we'll provide you a chance to ask the board some questions if you feel so. I'll start it off. Please give us a thumbnail sketch of your professional experiences, your pivotal belief in public education, and why you are interested in being our superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little bit about my professional experience. I started out in education as not the first choice in careers. I acquired military. However, after the military, I did attend school to get a degree in education. I've spent time in the school system for the last 28 years. I started out as a teacher assistant, early out of the military. Became a teacher, have served as assistant band director, assistant principal, of course teacher, principal, and superintendent. It is my core belief that the public education system is here to build a foundation for students to be successful, to be thriving community contributors in their community and the world at large. It is my firm belief that educating students is not just about academics, although that is a very key component. It is our task as educators to develop a well-rounded student, developing critical thinking skills, so that they can contribute meaningfully to the communities in which they live. I am interested in the superintendency here. I think it's an opportunity. I've looked at the data for this district, and there is an opportunity for growth. I believe I have the skill set and the experience to assist in accomplishing the goal, which is to continuously increase student performance. So that is why I'm interested in being so.
Thank you. Excuse me. As the new superintendent of the school system, what will be your actions for the first month, the first few months, and the first 6 months of your time in office?
As a new superintendent, I've always started with a 90-day plan, a 90-day entry plan as superintendent. And in this plan, there is a list of things that I aim to accomplish within the first few months on the job. And if you'd like a copy of it, I have a copy that I will share with you. And it ranges from everything from spending time with each board member, getting to know each board member, finding out what are priorities for each board member and then the board as a whole, meeting different community members, visiting schools, getting to know who's in our schools, talking with students, teachers, staff members, going out into the community, being visible, meeting key stakeholders, elected officials, county representatives, the whole gamut.
How would you gauge your success at the end of your first year?
Gauging success is we all consider success in different ways. But one of the methods in which we assess what we've done in the first year is for the board to review things that have been listed, minor goals that we might have accomplished in that amount of time, seeking community feedback as to how they feel the district has moved in the first year or so, talking with staff members, seeing if we have addressed any of the concerns that they've had since I started as a superintendent. So community feedback surveys would be the primary way we would assess the success of the first year.
Dr. Hines, my question, it centers around challenges and adaptability. So since you're former military, we know you can probably adapt to almost anything. What's the biggest challenge you expect to face as a first-year superintendent here in Selma?
Well, coming in at this point in the school year, I believe one of the biggest challenges will be preparing for the next school year. We are halfway through the school year, and it's about that time to start preparing for the upcoming school year. So one of the biggest challenges is probably going to be planning a budget. Something that the superintendent and the school board works on together, finding out the priorities, things we need to address financially. Another major challenge is probably going to be filling positions. It's my understanding that we have a good number of non-certified teachers in the classroom, recruiting people who are highly qualified or who are willing to become highly qualified by getting certification. And then planning and developing a strategic goal or plans, strategic goals for the district. Being an outsider, one of the key things is going to be gaining trust of the community. And so while it's going to be a task, it is going to be a challenge.
Thank you for that response, Dr. Hines. Describe your decision-making style and give a few examples of strategies you've used in different situations.
My decision-making style is that of a collaborative approach. It is my desire to always have, not to remember, number one, it's not about me. To have everyone who has a stake in the decision to be made, be a part of the process. I believe in getting feedback from all of the stakeholders. between schools, shortage of buses and bus drivers. And so a couple of years ago, we started brainstorming how could we address all of these things. And so we came to the table, all of us, to come up with a plan. And the end result was putting elementary and high school on separate schedules to address the bus shortage, the bus driver shortage, to address the discipline, things happening on buses with middle school and high school students that elementary students shouldn't see. And so everyone came to the table. It was principals and transportation staff, the SRO, child nutrition director, because the difference in time, of course, capturing the staff, we're going to have to work a different schedule. Of course, boarding. And so in having that kind of collaboration, we were able to come up with a major, a decision that was a major undertaking. It took several months of planning, lots of long hours, but in the end result, I think the community was very appreciative of the change.
Thank you for that answer. Your next question focuses on community engagement. What are your ideas about engaging families who are inexperienced with participating in the educational process, or they have had negative experiences? And also, could you talk to us about how you would support the staff in making sure that they successfully and respectfully include these families?
It is my belief that students and families, students and their parents are our customers, and we should treat them as such. We don't know what parents' experiences have been with school systems as a child, as a parent, so we should take the approach that we're going to be welcoming to every student, every parent. We have to build trust with them. It's important that they feel that they are valued. And so the school has to be welcoming. Listening without judgment. Giving them the space and opportunity to express their concerns. Reducing barriers that may prevent them from being engaged with the school, whether it's a communication barrier or a transportation barrier. Being flexible with meeting times. I was military, I believe in structure. But with that, having an open door policy allowing for staff members, parents, community members to have access to the superintendent, to express whatever it is on their heart and mind. There is a chain of command. I believe in following the chain of command. Issues at the school level between teachers and students should be handled at the school level. Not to say that the superintendent should be aware in some cases, but there is a chain of command and it should be handled at the lowest level possible. But to help with this transition, facilitating open communication and making sure that everyone knows who the superintendent is, that I am visible to the community, having conversations. I keep saying communication is key. People need to know that I'm willing to listen. The superintendent is willing to listen to their concerns. Being transparent about priorities, whatever the priorities are that the board and the superintendent, schools make for a particular year or period of time, making sure that the community understands and is knowledgeable of those priorities. Building relationships, getting to know people in the community, them getting to know me, and what I value as a person. All of those things are key in making the transition with the leadership.
Thank you.
My question is twofold. It's going to require you to look back, we'll look forward at our schools, but then also look back at your experience and your results. So the first part is, what would you do to improve student achievement in our schools? And then that second part has 3 questions. Specifically, describe your experience developing and implementing, evaluating curriculum and instruction programs to raise achievement. 2, what assessment, support, and accountability structure did you put in place? And 3, what were the results? So I think we should take the second part first, where you look back at your experience and your results. And I can repeat that if you need me to.
Looking back at my experience with our results, making sure teachers, administrators have the resources they need to be successful. We've established and set a goal, but it's unrealistic to expect for teachers and students to meet the goal if we don't prepare them, give them the resources and the tools that they need to meet those goals. And so that's a key component. Once the strategies are in place, they have the resources, reviewing the data. We talk a lot about data, but many times the data is not utilized effectively because sometimes people don't understand the data. We throw data at numbers at people, and they don't always understand. And so, again, making sure that they have the resources they need, making sure they understand the results that we're getting, and using that to guide us as we make changes to improve or to modify what we're doing to accomplish that goal. And so we've spent, in my past experience, we have spent a great deal of time providing professional development to teachers, having conversations with them about the data, and making sure that they are having the same conversations with students. Students need to know where they stand. If they don't understand where they are less likely to want to make a change. And also sharing that information with parents. And excuse me, second part of your question.
So for
Before I go, and if you want a copy of our data, I have that for you. we have a curriculum that everyone is using. Making sure that the curriculum is utilized with fidelity, ensuring principals making sure that they are observing and evaluating teacher instruction, what's going on in the classroom, of course, spending time discussing data, reviewing data, having those conversations with parents, professional development, and not necessarily going away from or professional development, but having ways that we send one or two people out to be trained and come back and bring that information back to the school system, or to the schools. Those are some of the ways that we have implemented structures and put things in place to make sure that teachers are performing the way they need to be performing. And I think I lost track of your question.
I think it would be what were the results of the structure?
So the results, because we were more intentional about using the data that we have, putting systems in place to progress and monitor what we were doing throughout the year, and utilizing that to make any adjustments. We've seen increases in both ELA and math in various grade levels. We've put some things in place at the middle and high school to focus on not just performance proficiency in ELA and math, but some things in place to meet the needs of those who are already performing at higher levels, ACT prep classes and dual enrollment. And so all of those things contribute. One of the other things that we put a focus on was attendance. We experienced, or are still experiencing, issues with student attendance. And if students are not in school, then naturally they cannot perform. They're not getting the instruction to perform.
Okay, our next question is, how have you held staff members accountable for student achievement while balancing the demands on teachers, and this again is a three-part. In that vein, what strategies have you implemented to measure performance outside of test scores? How were the strategies shared with staff, and what was their reception? If there were any obstacles, how did you overcome those obstacles? And then what were the results to academic growth and morale?
Holding staff members accountable for student achievement, it's more than just talking about numbers. It's being data informed, knowing how to interpret those numbers, soliciting resources, preparing resources, and professional development to help teachers meet the needs and the expectations that are set. One of the ways that you measure staff performance, or that we measure staff performance, is through other than test scores, is through classroom assessments. There are some informal ways that we can assess staff performance, and classroom assessments is one of the ways. Classroom observations, informal observations. Teachers are evaluated annually, but there should be some informal observations that are non-punitive and conversations that are taking place to point out things where teachers may be lacking, and providing resources for them to improve, opportunities for them to improve. Data-driven analysis, reviewing data, making decisions based on data, and adjusting where it's needed. Some obstacles that we have faced is we throw all this data at teachers, and we definitely had to consider, our state was having conversations about state funding and revamping the funding formula. So we had to think about what if we get less money from the state. We knew we didn't have a large amount of local contributions, so we had to take all those things into consideration. All our capital project plans that we had, on paper, we had to consider all of that in deciding how we were going to manage that budget. And so, after the second year, we decided that it was going to be in the district's best interest to request an increase in local contributions.
The next two questions for you on finance and budget is, number one, what analysis or information did you gather to support your decision-making process? And what was the impact of your decision?
Analysis we use is expenditures versus revenues. Looking at trends year after year is what we had to look at. Student enrollment, at the time, our state funding was based on student attendance and how great student attendance was, in addition to enrollment. And so we had to take all of that into consideration. The end result was we knew we had to get funds from somewhere. We also made a point to start searching and seeking grant opportunities. I think that is something that school districts don't take advantage of quite enough. And so we started working and looking for opportunities to apply for grants. And we did apply for a huge grant of $500,000 from the Department of Justice. Thankfully, we were awarded. So that's allowed us to do some things that we would not have normally been able to do.
I have one follow-up. I know you mentioned that you guys had to ask for an increase in local contributions. What was the result of that?
In our state, we can ask, school districts are allowed to ask up to 4%, with no questions asked from the supervisors. There are some additional requirements for us to ask up to 7%. There were some community members who were quite disturbed by the asking for an additional amount. But we as a district had to explain where we were and what we were going to use the funds for. And so, while you can't please everybody says, nobody wants to pay more taxes, obviously. But the majority of our parents knew our situation and made sure that we were transparent about it and how we were going to use funds. And so, ultimately, no one challenged it. So, this year we have the additional funds.
The last question for tonight talks about long-term commitment. If you've done your research on Selma, you know that we've had a number of superintendents, but we're looking for long-term commitment. The question states, considering the importance of stability and leadership, how do you plan to establish a long-term presence in our community and ensure consistent leadership for our school system?
It will be my intent to involve myself in the community. Obviously, I'm from Mississippi, so I would have attending school events, of course, and community gatherings, and meetings, taking part, becoming a member of various organizations, building some personal connections. I don't know anyone here in Selma, so building some personal connections is one of the things I would do. I've mentioned before that building trust in the community, and being transparent about where we are, where we want to go, having conversations, and listening to community stakeholders about where they envision the district going. Using that feedback to help set goals so that we all have a shared vision as to where we want the district to go. Being transparent about our progress, sharing the results of where we are. Collaboration is going to be key in moving the district forward. Everyone has a stake in how the district performs. And so it's going to take every community partner to move the district forward. I've been in this profession long enough to know that many times it's not always what, especially in this position, what the superintendent wants to do. As long as the superintendent and the board are in agreement, I would be willing to stay as long as the board would have me. But it would be my intent to be here for a long time.
The other part to that question is, what strategies will you implement to ensure stability with the principals and at the school level itself? And we're asking that question because we keep having a turnover of administrators, so we want to stop that too. Not only superintendents, but the administrators, we want stability here, so we want to know, what strategy do you have in mind to help our principals remain here as well as our other faculty staff?
Well, one, people have to enjoy where they work. Providing a working environment where people want to come is going to be key. Developing strong systems and processes. People are, it's my belief that people are happier when they know what's expected of them. And then we set them up for success. When people feel success, they tend to stay where they are. Building collaborative partnerships, working closely with the school board and staff to align all our priorities. Again, giving the administrators some opportunities to provide input, to have some decision-making autonomy for their school and what's taking place, as long as it's in line with district policy and within the guidelines, framework of what's required by the state. Investing, we invest in teachers a lot, but we also need to invest in our leaders. Leaders need professional development as well. And so we have to pour as much time and effort into setting them up for success as we do our teachers and students. And again, feedback. What allowing the administrator to tell you some of the challenges they have and some of the struggles they're having, and finding strategies and ways to address them, to assist them, so that they're not feeling the burnout and the defeat. Celebrating their small successes, because there are a lot of things, a lot of good things that schools do that we don't recognize, we don't tell our own story good enough. And I think that's one of the things that we should do more. And one of the things I would do is helping schools and leaders celebrate the small successes, tell their story, tell the good things that is happening within the walls of the schools.
That kind of does all the questions that we have for you this evening. Do you have any questions for the board?
Not at this time. I think I've asked most of the questions that I had earlier today. So I think I have all the answers that I need thus far.
Well, I understand you have an outstanding guide,
Yes.
and she's very knowledgeable about everything going on in Southern City Schools. So if you were with her, you got an earful. A lot of questions.
She was a great host.
Okay, great. Well, we want to thank you for considering Southern City. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to drive here tonight or today. And we hope you had an enjoyable stay, enjoyable visit. Our next steps, of course, we're interviewing 3 other candidates this week, and we'll convene next week or the week after, but we plan on having a superintendent by February, before March. So we know that this is a very important process, so, if you're selected, we hear back from us soon. So again, thank you for coming tonight and answering questions, and we appreciate you. And congratulations on being one of our finalists.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and meet you all, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Oh, sorry, result, you did.
Are we gonna get a chance to ask another?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Result, okay, feel free. I jumped the gun, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to reiterate to you that one of the things that have really bothered me this term I'm on board is fairness. We have lost so many teachers and administrators and different people, and they were replaced with people who do not live in Selma. And that's not a bad thing, but the problem comes in when it's not done in a fair manner. If you're a superintendent, how is
we view the schools and the community as a service when we don't pour our resources into the people who are in the community. Because when I leave, I'm not here when I leave. You all can still be here. And so we have to pour our resources, our time, our effort into developing the people that we have. It's never a good idea to repeatedly and consistently have turnover in teacher positions or leadership positions. I like to consider myself as a fair person. I believe in following processes, having processes and procedures in place and following them. It does an organization no good to have a policy